right. Let's turn our attention to the afternoon kick, but in the Rose Bowl, it is Indiana and Alabama. We have, of course, a lot of injuries that we are monitoring, especially on the Alabama side, that could play an impact in this. On the Indiana side, just the remarkable, awful injury luck of having one of your best defensive linemen jumping up to give a high five and then having his leg buckle. It's tough scene there for the Hoosiers defense, but it's still a group that has done nothing but just check every box and pass every test in terms of not just being a team that can take advantage of a weak schedule to go win a bunch of games, but a team that can beat some of the best teams in the sport. You beat Oregon in their house. You beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. There is nothing fluky about where Indiana is here now. Now they go up against a program and a brand and a monster that is Alabama, that is not led by Nick Saban, but man, it is still loaded with some of the most talent that you are going to find in all of college football. Bud, what is the key for Alabama to play to its talent ceiling? Because if there is a criticism of the last two seasons, I think it is that the talent rating and the talent analysis going into the year has not always lined up with the win-loss record.
I think a lot of it is defensively. Indiana has killed teams playing a lot of zone this year. Bama's a team that wants to play more zone. I think Bama has the physical potential, like athlete-wise, and I think their secondary is very good to play more man. I think they will almost have to show more man in this game. So how much man do they think they have to play? Like how much zone can they get away with playing? And like how effectively can they play a lot of man coverage against Indiana? Indiana is a heavy RPO team. I don't mean like QB run stuff. I mean like, hey, we're pick a guy, we're reading this guy, like we're RPOing off a certain dude. Otherwise, like balls out. Typically, like the teams that play man are a little better against that, right? And Mendoza's also not really much of a run threat. So I think that would also kind of lend yourself like we want to play more man here. Can they get away with doing it? Like they don't play a ton of man; they play more zone. So you're asking them to maybe not play outside their ability, but to play outside of their comfort zone if you want to maximize their chance. And I don't know how well that matches up in a national quarterfinal, right? So styles make fights. I don't love that matchup for the Bama defense personally.
DK, what stands out? Where is this one going to hinge?
I think if Ty Simpson can get hot, like I'm not convinced that Alabama is going to be able to run the ball. I mean, when we talked about it on our picks on the Locks pod, do they just try to throw it? I mean, you've got to keep them honest. So, I mean, they had 28 rushes or 25 rushes for 28 yards against Oklahoma, and a lot of those were sacks for Ty Simpson getting pressured. But the strength of your team are your weapons on the outside, and Ty Simpson, when he's hot, he can be really good. So that's where I think the kind of matchups would tend to favor Alabama if they can make this a game. I do think Indiana will be able to score against Alabama's defense. Not a shootout by any means, but I do think they'll be able to score. They're one of the more balanced teams of any in this college football playoff. So for me, if Alabama's got to put points on the board, I think their best chance is through the air.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that overall just kind of makes me skeptical of Alabama's ability to make the deep run. It's not that they're not talented. It's that offensively, it's the Ty Simpson show. And they pretty much they need him to do everything, it feels like, most of the time. And when he's playing well, it works. When he's not, they really don't have a counter. So I look at the matchup here. Alabama's going to have to hit explosives in the passing game because they're probably not going to be able to run the ball very effectively because nobody's been able to run the ball effectively against Indiana, though. Maybe this is where the absence of Daly has an impact because he's not their best pass rusher, but he is a very disruptive player, particularly in the run game. So maybe Alabama finds some success there. But I do think that overall, the one area of Indiana's defense that has been vulnerable, they do allow big plays in the passing game. They will give up explosives. So if Alabama is able to find those shots and hit enough of them, I think that they can make this game very uncomfortable for the Hoosiers. It's just at the same time, and as you guys touched on, like Alabama has not faced a lot of passing offenses that push the ball vertically on average, like as far as air yards are concerned. The two that they faced that had a higher air yardage per attempt than Indiana were Florida State and Tennessee. Well, we know what Florida State did to them, but that's a very different offense than what Indiana runs. And Tennessee runs a very different offense than Indiana does. This is more like, Bud, you mentioned they run a lot of RPOs, but they're also very kind of pro style overall in what they're doing. And they also have a much better quarterback than either Florida State or Tennessee had in Fernando Mendoza as far as hitting those throws. So we saw last week against Mateer, Alabama there were a lot of dudes running open in that secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana has very good receivers too. I think you're going to see a lot of dudes running open in the Alabama secondary. And I think Indiana's going to be able to move the ball effectively. I think Indiana will be able to run the ball better in this game than Alabama will, which I think tilts it in their favor. So I do think that if you're Alabama, you have to figure out a way to get Indiana to turn the ball over and give you extra possessions. It's really your number one route to victory here, because I do think Alabama can win. I do think there is something to the ability of, if you look at them defensively, Indiana hasn't faced a whole hell of a lot of defensive lines that have this kind of body and talent. And pressure-wise, they're not great. They're not bad, but they're kind of more middle of the road as far as pressure rate allowed. Like Fernando Mendoza has been pressured a lot. Of course, he's been superhuman-like when he has been pressured because he's not afraid to stand there and take the hits. So if you're the Tide, you have to get that pass rush going. You have to figure out ways to overwhelm that offensive line, and you have to figure out ways to bait Mendoza into traps or at least hurry him. Because we did see on the road against Oregon earlier this year, he overcame it, but he did throw that pick six when Oregon was getting after him. You have to figure out ways to do that yourself. Because if Alabama doesn't win the turnover battle, there's no way they win this game, in my opinion.
You do have the athleticism on that defense, though, to be able to run it the other way or have a big return or flip the field. You know, those things are there. Lottie Brooks was tremendous in the first round matchup, which leads to my next question. Will Ryan Williams be a factor in this game? Kalen DeBoer has been asked about Williams and his sort of lack of involvement in the offense. He defended, our concepts are not built to necessarily get the ball to one player. Certainly sometimes we do with screens and things like that, but the ball, we need to do that because he's a playmaker. But in our concepts, the ball found other guys and those guys made plays. We'll see. There have been obviously questions about what Ryan Williams' future is going to be beyond this, just as much as anybody else who's a gifted player with the transfer portal set to open. What do we think about Williams in this matchup? If you were to take a guess, do you think we see him force fed? Do you think we see a decent impact, or do we see a nothing, Danny?
I don't think they're going to force feed him the ball. They don't have to. They've got other weapons who have stepped up. Jeremy Bernard's been awesome. You mentioned Brooks stepping up. But I think it makes you nervous. I think for a defense, I don't think you're game planning to stop Ryan Williams by any means. I think there's the threat that he could hurt you. But we just saw him with his 10th drop against Oklahoma. Mentally, I don't know where his headspace is. That is not somebody I would want to be forcing the ball to.
Last 4 games, he has 4 catches for 63 yards. If you look at him on the season, against ranked teams, 6 games, 17 catches for 224 yards and 1 touchdown. No, he's not going to have an impact in this game.
We're playing against a ranked team. He's not just going to be able to blow past him and get wide TF open.
He's like the 3rd or 4th best receiver on this team. We're only fascinated with him because he had 1 great game against Georgia.
He made some plays.
I think
he makes plays. He's not a good receiver, but he'll make a play.
What do you think, Bud?
I think there's some chance he's still special as far as speed wise and agility. There's some confidence issues with the catching. So maybe they do try to find other ways to get the ball in his hands, potentially. I could see that. Yeah. But I don't know that they have to Tom and Danny's point.